Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies, bringing you another Forgeworld tank video. I told you guys in a previous video, actually two previous videos, that I've been working through my collection of Imperial Guard Forgeworld tanks that I got about a year ago, and my plan is to have them completed before the year is out. I don't want them sitting on my pile for any longer. Thankfully I'm going to get my chance to do another one here today. Quite a nice tank as well. One of my favorite chassis is the Macharius, and my favorite one of the Macharius is the Vanquisher. So that's what I'm going to be painting up in today's video, the Macharius Vanquisher. An absolutely beast of a tank. I'm going to be painting it up to match in with my Krieg, which is where it belongs. And yeah, I'm excited to share that journey with you guys. I had to do a couple different things to the paint scheme, but we'll talk about that moving into the video, and to keep it in line with the rest of my Krieg tank, especially with the chevrons on the dozer blade. As this thing doesn't have a dozer blade, I had to figure out where else to put those. So it's a fun video, and I hope it turns out well. So enjoy. Before I get into it though, I just want to say a huge thank you to my patrons. You guys are absolutely amazing. I wouldn't be able to continue doing what I'm doing without you guys. If you're interested in getting involved with it yourself, there are links to it below in the description. You get access to a private Discord server. You can hang out with me on a daily basis and talk to nearly 250 other people about your hobby and get involved with different events and stuff like that. And you get an extra video every single week. 52 extra videos a year, I think, is pretty good of a reward, and you get that at absolutely any tier. Okay, now we are ready to start painting a beast of a tank. So this is the hull of the Macharius tank. Obviously there is three variants of the Macharius tank. I only currently own two of them. This one here, which is the Macharius Vanquisher, and I also own the Macharius Vulcan with the Vulcan Mega Bolters. I am still waiting to get my grubby mitts on the last one. The Macharius tank is a very interesting tank, as it's supposed to fill roughly the same battlefield role as a Baneblade. The story goes that not many Forge Worlds are allowed access to the designs of a Baneblade. It's supposed to secure the knowledge of such a powerful and dangerous weapon from falling into the hands of, chaos or traitor forces or anything like that. So very few Forge Worlds are allowed to produce them, which tends to mean that there's a shortfall of Baneblades, why they're considered to be so rare and so valuable. But some Forge Worlds want to secure large military contracts, which means that they have to, in some way, shape or form, make up for the shortfall of not being able to build Baneblades, and that's where the Macharius line of tanks come from. They are named after, of course, Lord Solar Macharius, who is a glorious and powerful leader of the Astra Militarum, who brought many worlds back into compliance after the Horus Heresy. Quite a bit after the Horus Heresy. So you guys have seen me painting up some of my Krieg tanks before, and I'll be using all of the same techniques for this one. Starting by spraying the entire miniature with normal black spray, and then the next few steps are all airbrushes. Now, I know I usually avoid airbrushing when it comes to my channel. Obviously, I don't like people to see videos that require an airbrush. Not everyone has access to one. And for that, I am indeed sorry, but I did start my Krieg project long before I started my channel. And I started painting tanks like this before that, so I do want them all to match. I do want it to be quite a large collection of tanks that all look like they're from the same force. So this one is going to be an airbrush video. So I basically gave it a nice pre-shade of the Mechanicus Standard Grey, and then I went in with the Fang and started to block in where that actual blue hull is going to go. Now the hull is actually quite a number of coats of paint. I've said it before, maybe you guys are tired of hearing me say it, but I really like there being depth to paint, especially something like a tank. So depth, I want to see very many layers as I go through the process of painting. I want you to look at the tank and see a lot of those layers. I feel some people allow themselves and their tanks to be a really flat, basic color. Like if it's a Blood Angels tank, it's just red. And without any highlighting or shading in that, it looks more like a toy than it does a miniature, if that makes sense. And that's what I try and avoid with these things. I want these to be tiny representations of war. And I think the best way to do that is to give them a decent paint job. And I think layers is the thing that makes the paint job decent. Following through, being careful, good trigger control on the airbrush, and getting that blue into the spots where I want it to go, and avoiding the other parts as much as possible. When I used to paint tanks back, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I would always make silly decisions like the barrels would be silver, because I feel like that's how it would be. And then you look at every picture of every tank ever, and the barrels are painted the same as the tank. So I'm going to follow through with that same thinking on this particular beast. Give it the blue barrels. Now I'm just got on a bit of that shading that I talked about. Obviously we talked about the idea of getting some highlights. So I'm going to shade it now. I'm going to go around some of the rivets, some of the lines, get a bit of a dark color in there. We will go back in with the fang again after this and just hit those highest points once again. Give the hull its last kind of bit of the blue before we start the kind of weathering process, if you're with me. But of course, before we get into the weathering process, I have to go through the where in the blue hell I'm putting chevrons on this thing. I, for some reason, have decided that chevrons are involved with my Krieg army. I don't particularly know why. But if my tanks can have a dozer blade, they have a dozer blade. So all my Chimera, all my Lehman Russ variants have dozer blades. And across the dozer blades, I've done chevrons. And I want to continue that through this one, although it doesn't have a dozer blade. So I'm seeing those two kind of square panels on the side of the tank on either side. And I'm going to be working through and getting those chevron up, throwing some nice transfers over the top of them. And that's really going to make this tank pop. Because like I said, lots of these tanks are the majority of that one color. You know, if you look at a historical picture of a Sherman, it's green, just all green. Bits of stuff can be hanging off it, and there might be a unit marking or something on it, but the majority of the time it's just all green, which I think is kind of dull. We are in the 41st millennium here, so I think we can allow ourselves a bit of indulgence, add a splash of color, but reasonable color. I don't want it to look ridiculous. And I guess you guys will be the judge of that, though, at the end of this video, whether or not I pulled off not making it look ridiculous and going overboard with the chevrons. So the first thing I did was obviously tape off the rest of the hull that I want to keep the blue nice and safe. I did actually give the hull just the sides of the hull, a quick coat of a varnish from a spray can, just to protect the paint a little bit from this tape. Obviously, if I don't want to be peeling the tape off and taking chunks of paint with it, that will be a nightmare, especially with the whole idea of me wanting it to be layered up. It's 4 layers of paint on this already. I don't particularly want to go back through that. So the first thing I did was block in the areas with jet black. So black out of an airbrush. I went through 2 coats of this to give myself a nice solid black coat. The light is catching there, the blue is shining through, hence why we require the second coat. Going through to the other side and doing exactly the same. There isn't many Forgeworld tanks I'm now missing from my collection, but there are a few. Some of them are quite rare these days and it's driving me nuts, but I will have to hunt them down for that completionist sake. My Krieg army needs every Forgeworld tank ever. Now it's time to put on the chevron tape. So most people just try and separate the tape and create the right pattern. The easiest way that I've found is to put tape all the way along. No gaps between them whatsoever. It literally pushes up against the last piece of tape. Follow that process all the way through across the entire area. Then remove every second piece of tape. This will give you perfectly separated chevrons instead of trying to do it the other way, which is quite silly. If anyone is actually trying to do it the other way, you're just giving yourself a hard time. It's a little bit of wasted tape, but I think it's definitely worth it. In fact, I don't even consider it to be wasted tape because it gives you such perfect chevrons at the end of it that I am super happy with it. From here, I need to get the base coat down for the yellow stripes, so I'm going to start by going to a white. Once again, I'm going to go for 2 coats of white to get a nice strong base coat, and that's when I actually go into an Indian ink. Gives me the really nice yellow color that I love for my chevrons. I will do this color forever for this. And same thing again, 2 coats. Unfortunately, the ink takes a little bit of time to dry, so a bit of a pain in the backside, but yeah, we got 2 sides to do. Probably waited about 5-10 minutes till it was really solidly dry. Did a second coat. And then I peeled off the tape. I may have been a little bit impatient. I really wanted to see what it looked like. So the second coat of yellow wasn't 100% dry when I was peeling away the tape, but I think that's okay. You can literally see the result that I get from doing this. And you can see the quantity of blue, which is just a little bit annoying. You can see now why I was trying to be careful with the tape. As I peel off this bit here, you'll see that I actually remove a little bit of the paint on the black chevron. There we go. Super annoying. But I just grabbed some black paint and painted it in again. Once I do the weathering process, you're never going to notice it. And there's the 2 panels, chevron and beside each other. I think it was really important to kind of follow that chevron pattern across the 2 of them at the same time instead of taping them separately. Because if they were a little off from each other, that would also be a thing that your brain would scream at you for. It just would look awful. Now I'm adding a little bit of silver to the tank, so anywhere that's supposed to be silver. So obviously I knocked out the tracks, all the aquillas, if there's any piping or bits of exhaust at the back or handles or any of those bits and pieces. You all know the bits and pieces on the tanks that are supposed to be silver. It's a very boring stage, quite annoying after doing so many fast and effective stages with the airbrush. And getting those awesome chevrons on to then jump to a small brush and tediously block in metallics for the next kind of 40 minutes. It wasn't that long, 20 minutes. Until I was quite happy. And it's one of those things where there's no set rules for what part of the tank should be silver. You just kind of feel it and decide what you want. I then dug through all of my transfers and then applied, I think I applied 20 transfers in total to the tank. I'm a huge believer in the glory of the transfers, and I will put them on it all over the place. As you can see, there's just little markings and something everywhere, including the turret itself. Nice Aquila on the barrel. Krieg and Wrath. I've decided to name this tank Wrath. 89 on top, so if there's any aerial assets looking down on the battlefield, to be able to tell the tanks apart. Now it's time to actually start weathering. So it's a very easy step. It's just a little bit of lead belcher, and we're going to very lightly dry brush this across the entire hull of the tank, catching all of those sharp edges. It'll catch all the rivets, all the different angles, and it just makes it look like that war-torn tank. If you ever look at a tank in a war zone, it's not a perfect, beautiful, pristine tank. Just for the sake of it driving down a road, it's going to get scuffed and scratched and stuff like that. And I think that once again adds another layer to the model. It makes it feel more of a miniature as opposed to more of a toy. So yeah, continuing this whole thing through with the turret as well. Even up and down the barrel. After that, we're going to get a bit of Abaddon Black and a little bit of sponge. And we're just going to add a few chips to the hull. And we're just going to use the sponging technique to just dab a little bit of black paint into certain bits and pieces. But I think the tank is looking pretty good because the turret is, I super glued that to a painting handle so I could hold it while I was painting. It means at no point, like halfway through the process, have I test fitted the turret and seen what they look like together, which I think is a lot of fun because it means I get that kind of grand reveal at the end where I get to put the turret on top and assess what the tank looks like as a whole, which is kind of exciting. Time for some Humbrol webbing powder. I just used some red rust. This stuff goes on all of my Krieg vehicles. I like to think of the surface of Krieg as a bombed out wasteland, which is what it really is. Noxious fumes all over the place. So I imagine it to be kind of deserty. And obviously with the amount of war and everything that's going on, it's kind of oxidized and kind of iron-based, rusty dust, if that makes. So I like the reds and oranges for my pigments on these tanks. I think it contrasts so well with the blue. I have been accused of going overboard with the weathering powder. It's obviously a step that if you decide to follow along with this and get your own Krieg tanks painted up, you can of course not put pigments on if you don't want to. Keep the tank looking neat and tidy. I love this step. I think it once again adds that flash of color. So I will continue to apply this to quite a large number of my tanks and all the different parts of the tanks as well. Obviously all the tracks get it entirely covered in it. And then pretty much anywhere where there's a nook or cranny, anywhere there's like lines where the dust would settle. This is my old cutting mat that you can see in the background. It's what I've been using to airbrush on and use pigment on. So yeah, apologize for that. Here is the finished minus the driver and the commander. My first Macharius tank, my Macharius Vanquisher, painted up. Super pleased with how it looks, especially in this little rotating camera bit here. Hopefully you guys can see the depth in color that I was talking about when it comes to the blue. Hopefully you like how the chevrons look on the side. I would like to know what your thoughts are. Do you think the chevrons work? Do you think they're overboard? What do you think of the weathering powder? Too much, too little? I've taken a couple of high resolution images to give you guys a better idea of what this beast is going to look like on a tabletop. And yeah, I love it. I should probably just start the Macharius, the second Macharius I have now. Yeah, maybe tomorrow. Okay guys, and there we have it, a Macharius Vanquisher painted up and ready for the tabletop, minus the tank commander and the driver that I have to paint up and add in as well. I didn't get enough time in the day to get them done, but I'm going to finish them off this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you give it a like. Ask me any question you want in the comments below, whether it be about Forgeworld tanks, Imperial Guard, 40k, Age Sigmar, or whatever you want to talk about. Just get in the comments and I will reply to each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. Make sure you've hit that subscribe button if you're not already, and I'll see you in the next video.